Hello, welcome, and good afternoon to everyone joining us online this afternoon for our Western Civilization and Ramsay Scholarship Information webinar. We've got a number of people joining us online here this afternoon, so I'll give it a minute so everyone can join and make sure that they're able to properly connect to the webinar before we get started. So I'll just give it a moment or so, and then we'll get into our introductions. Great, I can see everyone's still coming and joining in on the webinar, so welcome. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. I'm mindful of our time, so I would love to welcome everyone to our webinar, and I would like to firstly introduce myself. I will be your MC for this webinar, and my name's Karina. I currently work in the Future Students Australia team here at the University of Queensland, and I'm delighted and honoured to be able to introduce you to our guest speakers that we have here today for our webinar. I would like to introduce you all to Professor Alastair Blanshard, who is the Director of the UQ Centre for Western Civilization. And Alastair is going to be running you through a little bit about the program that we do offer here at the university, as well as deep diving into our Ramsay Scholarship as well. Also joining us online here this afternoon is Nicholas Carey. Nicholas is a current recipient of the Ramsay Scholarship, as well as studying within the Western Civilization program here at UQ. And Nicholas is actually an interstate student that we have. So Nicholas grew up in a small little regional town called Casino in New South Wales, and he's made his journey to come up to Brisbane here at UQ to be able to study within the Western Civilization program. So Nicholas will be giving a little bit of a student testimonial at the very end of our presentation to really get that student-facing perspective of what it was like to apply for the scholarship, go through that process, as also what it's like studying in his current program. So I'm so pleased that we have so many of you joining us online here this afternoon. And if you happen to have any questions as we go throughout this webinar, please feel free at the bottom of your Zoom panel to use the Q&A function. You should only be able to have that button on your Zoom panel, and you'll be able to submit those questions through. Once we get to the end of the presentation, Alastair will be more than happy to address those questions as we go through. So that's all from me. Thank you so much for joining us. And Alastair, please, I'm so happy to have you here today. I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you, Karina, and it's lovely to be joining you all this morning for this session on Western Civilization, the study of Western Civilization at the University of Queensland, as well as the UQ Ramsay Undergraduate Scholarships, which support that study. I'd like to start by just acknowledging that I'm coming to you from the lands of the Turrbal and Yagara peoples, and just pay my respects to elders past, present, and emerging. As Karina said, I'm the director of the Centre for Western Civilization here at UQ. I'm also the Paul Eliadis Professor of Classics and Ancient History here at the University of Queensland. So by training, my expertise falls in the area of the ancient Greeks and Romans, but I have broad interests, and in particular, the breadth of the Western Civilization curriculum is something that really excites and interests me. I mentioned my disciplinary background, partly to give you a sense of who I am, but also to really, signal something which is very important about the University of Queensland, which is that if you're at all interested in studying humanities in any depth, then really Queensland, the University of Queensland, is your best option. We offer, the range of subjects in a kind of depth and breadth that is really unparalleled for the rest of the state, right? As I mentioned, my expertise is the ancient Greeks, but I sit alongside, experts in China, in Japan, in Thailand, in all different kinds of cultures, places, languages, disciplines, really the range of humanities that we offer here at the University of Queensland is unparalleled for the rest of the state, right? No other institution in Queensland is able to offer the same kinds of depth and expertise. And also that we can do it backed by some of the most wonderful resources. We have fantastic museums. We have the Anthropology Museum, a Classics Museum. We have the most wonderful art museum. We have fantastic libraries with specialist collections. We're also deeply embedded in the cultural life of the city and the nation. We have fantastic connections with the galleries, museums, libraries, archives, both state and national. So if you're into a kind of rich, immersive, powerful, diverse kind of humanities experience, then really the University of Queensland is where you should be coming. As part of that sort of very rich selection of offerings is our Western Civilization program. It's a program that has now been running for 5 years, and it's one that we're extraordinarily proud of, where our graduates are going out, doing the most wonderful, wonderful things. We've had our first couple of crops of graduates there already, getting places in the most competitive universities around the world. We're starting to see them starting to forge what look to be very exciting and really important careers. So if you're interested in studying Western civilization at the University of Queensland, we offer it via 2 programs. So there's a Bachelor of Advanced Humanities Western Civilization, which is the straight humanities option. We also pair the study of Western civilization in our Bachelor of Humanities Western Civilization Bachelor of Laws program. So that allows you to take not only a major extended major, in fact, in Western civilization, but also to pair it with a law degree as well. Now, each of those programs have very distinct QTAC codes for application. So if you're interested in studying Western civilization, there's the QTAC information there. One thing just to note, because this has caused some issues in the past, is there's a generic QTAC code for the Bachelor of Advanced Humanities honours for all the other majors. But Western civilization, because we only take a small number of students each year, because it's quite competitive, it has its own QTAC code. So just if you're interested in applying for the Bachelor of Advanced Humanities Western Civilization, just make sure you've got the right QTAC code for the program. As you'll see there, the ATAR entry scores are quite competitive. We're currently the most competitive humanities program in the country, with an ATAR score of 95. If you're doing the International Baccalaureate, that equates roughly to 39. We imagine that those ATAR scores are going to remain relatively consistent. They've been around the 95, 96 entry for the last few years, and we don't see that shifting in any significant way for next year. We're gradually expanding the program, but we don't imagine that expansion is going to drastically impact on the ATAR entry scores. In terms of prerequisite subjects, it's very open. We just require the standard English requirements. The degree is a 4-year degree with built-in honours. If you're interested in the one with law, again, you'll see a very high ATAR entry score. Again, because we only take very few students in the program, that ATAR entry score is in fact higher than the standard entry score, for example, for the Bachelor of Arts and Laws. So it tends to hover around the 97. Ours tends to be slightly more competitive, around the 98.65. In some years, it's actually been slightly higher than that, although I think we're hoping to be able to gradually drop that down a bit, but I think probably that's again roughly where we imagine the ATAR entry scores are going to be for next year. The combination of Bachelor of Humanities with laws is a 5-year program. So let me just give you a bit of a sense about what you actually study in the program. So essentially, our program is what we call a Great Books program. Now, this is a program, a type of program, which is not particularly common within the Australian higher education environment, but is very common within particularly the US. And that is that it's a big reading program. So essentially, you work your way over the course of 4 years or 5 years through all the kind of great canonical works of Western culture, right? So we start with the Greeks and Romans and go all the way through to modern works. Now, what makes this very distinctive as a program is that it's not bound by disciplines. So you'll be, what it, defines it is in fact important, significant texts. And I'll talk a bit about the kinds of texts that we study in the program. But that means that, for example, you'll be reading works of philosophy, drama, history, literature, political philosophy. We look at all sorts of work, legal cases. So we do a huge amount of work in terms of covering a huge breadth of subjects. So this is a very good program if you're, as it were, have a broad interest in a variety of different things. If you're interested in drama, but you're also interested in history, you like a bit of philosophy. This is the kind of program for you, a very interdisciplinary program where, in one course, you may in fact encounter, 4 or 5 different kinds of works, poetry, prose, all sorts of things. As I say, it's a very similar to the programs that are offered at a number of elite US universities, in particular the universities of Columbia and Chicago, Columbia in New York, and Chicago have been really very influential in terms of how we've put together our curriculum. Indeed, basically our curriculum is very much modeled on the curriculum that's offered in Columbia University. Indeed, the major difference between the Columbia University model and our model is that Columbia University also has a swimming exam, but we figured, people here are reasonably okay on the swimming front, and also I'm the last person who should be teaching swimming, so we dropped the swimming requirement. But otherwise, we're very similar to the other programs. As I say, we've chosen a range of texts, and these texts have been chosen not only because they've been extraordinarily significant in terms of shaping the way in which people think, but will also have been very useful in, we think, looking forward to what we consider are going to be the wicked problems of the world and how we might face up to them. That these texts offer a kind of huge reservoir of different kinds of knowledge that we might be able to throw at contemporary problems. So let me give you an example of that. So one of the texts that we look at is Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. And in the course of the book, one of the real contentions that emerges is the fact that the monster, Frankenstein's monster, is outraged at the idea that Frankenstein won't create a partner for him, that he wants a partner to go out into the world with. And Frankenstein refuses to do that because he's worried about the monster's ability to reproduce. Now, this debate that is within the course of Shelley's Frankenstein is actually the kind of debate that, in fact, precisely people are having within the genetic world at the moment about, in fact, the creation of genetically modified life forms and whether genetically modified life forms should be allowed to reproduce. It's the same debate that, in fact, is happening in AI at the moment. Should we be allowed to create thinking machines that should also be able to update, improve, and reproduce themselves as well? So Shelley's Frankenstein is a fantastic text for thinking through what are actually extraordinary contemporary problems that we're going to be facing. I've talked a lot about texts, but the other wonderful thing about our program is that it's not just, as it were, texts. We offer 2 important courses, one which is a survey of Western music, and the other one which is a survey of Western art. So these courses are really designed to improve your visual analysis skills as well as your musical analysis skills. So And these courses are designed for absolute beginners, right? You don't need to have ever played a musical instrument. You don't have to read music. But if you want to, as it were, train your ears to be able to analyze a piece of music, to understand what its deep structure and why it works as a piece of music. If you ever wanted to get a sense of the grand sweep of musical traditions or the grand sweep of artistic traditions, then we have courses for you as well. So let me give you a little look at precisely what those courses are. So we have a number of compulsory courses that you would do over the course of your 4 years or 5 years. So these courses begin in the first year with the classical world, and you'd do that with me, and we would read, start with Homer's Odyssey and work our way forward via Greek drama, tragedy, a bit of Greek philosophy, some imperial biography. You'd hear about the biography of the Emperor Nero. We'd end with Ovid's Metamorphoses, this great reservoir of mythological stories, which has been so influential, particularly in terms of art. In the second semester, you do Jewish and Christian works, which starts with kind of biblical texts, but goes forward to read works like, for example, Dante's Inferno, and then on to consider things like, for example, the Holocaust, to look at Hannah Arendt, Primo Levi, these kinds of texts. In your second year, we do European Enlightenments and then Empire and its critics, thinking about kind of Western colonialism and the legacy of Western colonialism. And in the third year, you'd look at things like women and gender, situating Australia, and then a sort of reflective course, which is culminates the program, which is about constructing the West and thinking about the West, how useful is it as a concept, does it have a future, all those sorts of things. So those are the compulsory courses. In addition to the compulsory courses, we also have a number of elective courses as well. Shakespeare, the two courses I mentioned before, Sounding the West and Icons of Western Art, Western Political Thought, as well as two courses on legal history, which work really well, particularly for students doing the dual with law. They're the kinds of things that the law curriculum would love to have, but just doesn't have space for, and doesn't in fact have the staff for either. So our ability to kind of add added depth to a law degree is really quite strong. So that's the course list. Each week we deliver the course through a single lecture where everyone comes together to hear about a particular text, and we talk about the author and their historical context. But the other thing that we do is we do a very small group seminar for 2 hours, maximum 12 students. So this is much smaller than your standard tutorial size. And importantly, it's not only smaller, it's also longer as well. So most tutorials go for 1 hour. We think the texts that we're doing are so rich, so big, that actually you need 2 hours to really properly even start to scratch the surface. And so this is a course, because we only take very few numbers, because we work in small groups, you really get to know everyone in the program, which can be, I think, an issue for people, particularly coming to big institutions like the University of Queensland, which can occasionally feel a little anonymous. In our program, everyone knows each other. Your staff know you very well, possibly even too well. People are always kind of, I think, slightly worried that their staff is always looking at them to see, are they keeping up their standards, because we know, in fact, how you did previous semester, and we're looking to make sure that you're still hitting those same marks in the following semester. So there's a very lot of pastoral care. There's a lot of cohort building activities that happens in the program. It's a program which has one of the best retention rates for the university programs here at UQ. And people come to the course, they love it, they feel supported, and they find the curriculum really challenging and enriching. Now, in terms of support for study, we offer some of the most significant scholarships currently available in the country. We've had a slight change in terms of how we organize these scholarships, and this will be going forward from next year. We've slightly altered the amounts in terms of how we offer them, so we can, as it were, target the funds to make sure that they're delivering the best outcome for the most number of students. So from next year, the value of the scholarship will be 20,000 a year for the first 3 years of the program. But if you come from a non-metropolitan region of Queensland, essentially outside of the Brisbane area, and that includes interstate as well, there's an additional $12,000 available for each of the 3 years of study. So that would bring it up to about 32,000. So particularly if you're coming from regional Queensland, we're very conscious about the added financial burden that can have, particularly I think moving to an expensive city like Brisbane, and so we'd like to assist with that to make sure that you're not at all impacted by those costs. And so it'll bring it up to about 32,000. We offer 30 a year of those scholarships. We offer about 15 for the straight humanities program, 15 for the dual with law. The other thing that we offer, and this is I think a really great bonus, is that we also offer an economy airfare to an international destination if you want to go on exchange. So one of the things you can do at UQ is go on exchange, and we really encourage that. The program has an allowance if you're doing the straight humanities in the second semester of the second year to do that. UQ has one of the best networks of international exchange partners. We'd love you to have that international experience. We think it's really important for our students to be able to develop that kind of global perspective that comes from an international exchange. And so we will fund an economy airfare to help you take up those exchange opportunities. In terms of eligibility for the scholarship, it's open to all Australian citizens or permanent residents. Now, for New Zealand citizens, this can cause a problem because a lot of New Zealanders are on a visa category that wouldn't make them eligible for the scholarship. But if they have applied for permanent residency, and we deem you, along with as the Australian government does, to be a permanent resident if you've got an application in for permanent residency, then you're fine to apply for the scholarship. You apply in the final year of your studies, so that's in year 12. If you're going on a gap year, then you don't apply in year 12, you apply towards the end of your gap year. So you apply just before the year that you're going to commence your program. If you are going on a gap year, that's great. We absolutely encourage you to do that. We think it produces great students. Just be aware that you can't have enrolled in any prior degree do it. So fine to take non-award courses while you're on your gap year, but don't enroll in any degrees. If you have any queries about that, about whether an enrollment is going to affect your eligibility, just drop us a line and we'll be happy to clarify for it. Then if we offer you a scholarship, and then the second hurdle you need to get is first of all the scholarship, and the second one is a place in the program. So all scholarship awards are conditional on you also making the 8-hour entry score for the program. And then you need to just enroll and do it full-time load, and you'll be eligible for the scholarship. In terms of the selection criteria, so essentially we have 3 criteria: academic excellence, community service, and suitability for the program. I'll talk to each of those in turn. In terms of academic excellence, this one is probably the easiest to meet, in the sense that the 8-hour entry scores for the program are so high that in fact normally you're demonstrating a kind of academic excellence. So we're not expecting you to necessarily be topping the state, or being, a national essay prize winner, but rather that if you're performing at the kinds of levels where you're getting those high ATAR scores, then you seem to be demonstrating academic excellence. We'd love to hear about how you're traveling in your academic journey. Tell us about what subjects you're really enjoying. Tell us about any prizes you've won. That's always very helpful. If you're topping a particular subject, that's always really important. So academic excellence is often the one that we find is the easiest for candidates to satisfy. Less easy, I think, is community service. The scholarships are designed to really support students who have a strong sense of helping others, of wanting to make a difference, of wanting to make an impact in the world. And of course, community service is really important part of that. We want you to already have a strong sense of serving the wider community. Now, many schools we know have community service programs, and that's great. But I should say that in the past, I think it's really the candidates who have shown initiative around community service, who've not just been satisfied with having the relying on what's being provided by their school, but going out beyond that, that have been really most successful. And people who can kind of really articulate how they have made a difference. Now, we take community very broadly here. So it can be, also, the wider community, but it can also be your school community. It can be a community group you're involved in. It could be your church, whatever kinds of community that you have that you've been making a positive difference for. We'd love to hear. We'd love to hear that story. And the final thing that we look for is suitability for program. And by that, we mean not necessarily that you've got your life all planned out. We're not expecting candidates to have a plan for the next 10 years about where they want to be. I mean, we'd be slightly worried if you did, but rather what we want to get a sense of is kind of how you see this program, particularly the Western Civilization program, the Great Books program, helping you achieve what you want to achieve in life. And helping us to understand how you see this fitting into the bigger life, the life picture. Now, in terms of how that looks, in terms of the scholarship application, let me just talk you through that. So essentially, if you're preparing a scholarship application, these are the documents you need to get. You need to get a CV, and a CV 1 to 2 pages. That is all we need. The really important thing is the statement addressing the selection criteria. So when you go online and fill out the online application form, you'll be asked to write about 250 words on your academic excellence, your community service, and your fitness for program. So it's 250 words. Think about how you're going to craft those 250 words. That they're really really important. Often the thing that we often find is that people are so familiar with their school environments that they forget that if you don't come from that school, we don't know, kind of whether you have school captains, whether you have a school council, all these kinds of things. So if you could give us a bit of a sense of kind of what roles you've had, or that's very helpful. Likewise, in academic abilities, it's nice to get a sense of the class size as well. So whether everyone's doing the subject, whether you're topping a subject which has only got a couple of people in it, that's always useful to know. And as I said, the community service stuff and the fitness for program. And the other thing that we need is 2 written references. These written references must be able to speak to your academic ability and your community service activities. The best people are your school teachers. What they aren't, and I think this is really stressful, is that they're not character references, right? So we don't need kind of people to tell us that you're of good character. What we need is, in fact, a reference that kind of confirms, the impression that we've got from looking at the selection criteria about how well you're performing, about your kind of community activities. So it's not, as it were, a kind of exercise in how well are you networked. It's very much about people who can speak genuinely to your achievements, particularly within the academic sphere. So this is the time frame for the applications. They open on the 23rd of June. They close on the 10th of August. At that point, the assessment panel will meet. We'll go through the applications and we'll be preparing a shortlist for applicants. And then applicants are then invited for an interview. Those interviews will happen between the 29th of September and the 3rd of October. The interviews are really just an opportunity to learn a bit more about you. There's no trick questions. There's nothing there that is designed to catch you out. Really what they are is an opportunity for us to put a bit more kind of flesh on the bones of the application. They're also an opportunity for us, if there's anything that we're not understanding, or there's any points that we want to clarify in our own minds, any questions that we've raised, just to get a sense from you about that. But they really are designed to be supportive, and just an opportunity for us to meet the applicants. We hope to notify all applicants for interview by the 30th of October about whether they've had a conditional offer or whether they've been put on a wait list. And then around the sort of end of January, around mid-January, you get, of course, the final offer, and that happens when you get your QTAC application, when you get a place in the program, and then it will convert to a full scholarship. But look, that's been me talking for a long time. At this point, I think I'm going to hand over to Nick, who is going to talk a bit about kind of his experience of the program, and also what it's been like to move to Queensland. We'll then come back to me and then really open it up for any questions that you have. There's a facility within the webinar to ask questions, and so we'll have a bit of a Q&A session afterwards. But at this stage, let me hand over to Nick.
We're just having some technical issues, Alastair, with Nick joining us back online. His Zoom dropped out for a little bit there, so I can see that he's online, but he might just be having some tech issues getting his audio working. So we might just give it a moment or two,
Okay.
just to let him get that
while we're
sorted out.
waiting for Nick to join us, I'll just give a plug for our scholarship guide, which is now available. And we've just put it up on the website. This is your go-to manual for the scholarships. It talks you through the scholarship process. It gives you a sense of the timelines, and will also give you some hints about what we're looking for in each of the areas. So really do make sure that you can download one of those. We'll also have print copies available as well. If you have any questions about anything that I've raised today, there's our email address. Please do drop us a line, and we're very happy to answer any technical questions that you might have, offer any advice about suitability of referees, that sort of thing. So if you have any questions about kind of the scholarship process or anything like that, I'm sure just drop us a line. We're very happy to give you some information. But as I say, the scholarship guide is probably the most useful thing. Do we have Nick here with us yet?
Nick's still trying to join there, Alastair. I think while he's just taking his time to get his Zoom restarting. Should we just jump to the Q&A while we've got some time
Let's
for
do
him
that. That would be
to join
great.
us again? Okay, wonderful. So we've actually had a couple of questions that have come through while you were presenting, and I'd like to go through both of those with you now. Our first question that we actually received was, what are the notable differences between a Bachelor of Advanced Humanities and a Bachelor of Arts?
Right, good, thank you. That's very helpful. So I guess there are two things. So the Bachelor of Arts, I guess, is the most flexible degree that the university offers, in the sense that the range of subjects that you can take is the widest, and the order in which you can kind of put them together and combine them, I think, is probably also the most flexible in terms of the humanities space. The Bachelor of Advanced Humanities degree is a much smaller program, and it's designed really around certain kinds of majors. So the number of majors that you can take in the Bachelor of Advanced Humanities is much more limited. So obviously the one I've been talking about today is Western Civilization. And then the other ones that you can take in that degree are things like English, history, drama, what we used to call the sort of traditional humanities. Now, the reason why we've limited the number of majors that you can take as part of that degree is that what we want to do is really create a kind of cohort experience. So that's one of the things, is it's a much smaller program with much limited number of majors. The other thing that's quite distinctive about it is it has running through it, and you take one of these each semester, specific courses that are tailored to the Advanced Humanities degree. And these are courses that are designed to encourage kind of interdisciplinary conversations. They're designed to stretch you. They're designed to polish your vocational skills. They do all sorts of things, but they're only for people taking the Advanced Humanities degree. So the most flexible degree, the degree where you can put everything together in whatever order you like within certain rules, is the Bachelor of Arts. Our degree is much more structured and smaller, and has a kind of limited focus in terms of what we offer.
Thank you, Alastair. I do have a couple of questions now that have started to come through. Nick's still just trying to join us online, so happy to keep going with the questions and
let's do that.
Your responses. So our next one that has come through says, how many students are admitted per year for the 4-year Western Civilization course?
Okay, so for the 4-year degree, we would normally admit at this stage about 25 to 30 students a year. So we're planning to have a cohort of around 60, and that's up from our original 40. So over the next few years, we want to transition to eventually having about 80 students in the program, 40 doing the dual with law and 40 doing the straight humanities. Now, we're kind of transitioning towards that 80. So at this stage, we're currently planning to take about 60 next year, and that will mean that we'll take about 30 in the straight humanities program. We might take a few more, but that'll be around about the 30. We try and get a sort of balance of 50-50 in terms of the program. We'd probably take a few more of the straight 4-year humanities, because we do know that, in fact, a number of students like to take the Bachelor of Humanities initially, and then perhaps transition to doing the dual with law as well. And so, and that's provided you get the right kinds of grades in terms of your university performance, that is possible, and so we tend to take a few more.
Thank you, Alastair. Next question that we've received is, I'd like to hear about the careers that graduates are moving into after completing the course.
Great, excellent. So yes, so look, we've only been going for about 5 years now. So we only got our first 2 crops of graduates coming through. What's been very exciting, I think, has been the way in which they've been embracing kind of global opportunities. So we're seeing people, for example, getting doing postgraduate stuff at some of the best universities. We've currently got people placed with Edinburgh, Oxford. Next year we'll have some at Cambridge. We'll have some at London. So we're starting to see people to do kind of postgraduate education. In terms of where else they're going, big impact in terms of policy. We have students because they're very engaged with the world, because they're looking to make an impact. We're starting to see them in policy. We've got people, for example, at looking to Department of Prime Minister and Cabinet. We've got people applying for DFAT, those sorts of places. So we're starting to see very high level kinds of careers emerging there. We've also got some people who are very interested in the glam sector as well. So one of my former students is currently who's been at Edinburgh this year, is now going to be transitioning into working in the kind of arts. The arts area as well. So I think that's the main thing. I think the world of policy, the world of government, DFAT, and other kinds of programs. I think what people find is that our kind of program is really a wonderful springboard to other kinds of opportunities. Now I see that Nick is now back with us. So Nick, I might just ask you to say just a few words, then we can perhaps resume the Q&A.
Thank you. And you're all right to hear me at the moment? All good?
Yep.
Perfect. Firstly, I'd just like to apologize. Sorry, my laptop has crashed itself in due course, as technology does. So I've just had to source a friend's computer to be able to join. But such is life, and we problem solve. I first wanted to sort of speak and then thank Karina for her generous introduction at the start of the webinar today. And I really think that it comes, what that comes back to is that when I was in high school, I myself was watching the webinar for this specific program and its related scholarship. And I think I really would have been encouraged by the fact of hearing that someone from a small town or a local region was able to achieve, like, first of all, entry into the program, and second of all, to have the opportunity to be granted with one of the scholarships. So shortly about me, I'm Nick, and I study the double degree, the dual, with humanities and law. So I'm currently in my second year in the program. And as I've said before, I'm from Casino in northern New South Wales, and really moving up to Brisbane for me was something which was itself a big step. I think I've only had one other person from my school come up to UQ, so it was a large leap of faith for me, and I think that was really reinforced by the generosity of the program and the scholarship. And what I mean by that is, first of all, that I found a lot of comfort in lots of the things that Alastair has talked to you today about, in the interdisciplinarity of the course. So I'm someone who loved my modern history, loved my ancient history, my English at school. I wasn't very good at maths, and really something that the major thing that attracted me to the program was that I didn't feel like I was confining myself in one set discipline. And I wrote a little bit down on when Alastair was talking. He mentioned the idea of reservoirs of kinds of knowledge. And I think that that's a really powerful way to display what the humanities and in particular the Western Civilization program is about. So that really was the first thing that gave me a bit of comfort in moving up to Brisbane. The second, of course, is being able to have that less of the financial stress due to the scholarship. And in this, I'll talk first on wanting to reassure potential applicants about the process of applying for the scholarship. As I'm sure you've been given a slight overview this afternoon, the process really is just about the panel getting to know you. It involves a written element, which was really good, at least for me, to practice expressing what my skills were in a relatively easy to articulate way. And then second of all, an interview which was just about the panel understanding what makes me drive, what makes me tick. And I think that that's probably one of the most interesting things about the people in the program, is that you get people from multiple different backgrounds, be it in education, be it cultural backgrounds, be it economic or geographical. And you place them in a pretty rigorous academic setting and see what comes out of it. And first of all, what comes out of it is some really good friendships, as Alastair has alluded to. Being a small program, it's been wonderful for me to be able to make such close friends. And second of all, as is being sort of alluded to in the interview process, your passion and your drive really comes out in full force, because you're being surrounded by these really complex and timeless and enduring concepts and ideas. So I'll stick with that for the moment. The only other thing I'd like to mention really before passing back over to the Q&A is that being a recipient of the scholarship has also allowed me to be able to attend like a residential college, which is something that, as someone who has moved to Brisbane, has been such a privilege to be able to experience, and really wouldn't have been able to without that financial help. And I think that, again, you find people who are in the program have gone down multiple different avenues with where they're living. You know, that some might still be at home, some might be commuting, some might have moved entirely. And I've been really lucky, I think, and I would suggest that avenue for anyone asking for advice. Does that cover it pretty well, Alastair?
That's great. Thank you, Nick. That's really very helpful. Thank you. And as I say, in particular, I think if there's anyone out there who would like to be put in touch with a student who wants to hear more about our program, we're always very happy to facilitate that. So again, you will have seen our email address. Please do just drop us a line, and if you have someone who wants to, as it were, hear what it's like from a student, very happy to facilitate that. And I'm sure Nick will be very happy to chat to anyone. So great. So Karina, any more questions?
Definitely, Alastair. So we'll jump straight back into it.
Yep.
The first question that I've got here for you: if a young person does not quite achieve the required ATAR initially, is it possible to transfer from a BA, a Bachelor of Arts, at UQ into the Western Civilisation course?
Yes, it is, absolutely. I think, if you're thinking, about if that does occur to you, I think your first option is, rather than thinking about the BA, think maybe about the Bachelor of Advanced Humanities, because, the Bachelor of Advanced Humanities Western Civilization is just one stream of the Bachelor of Advanced Humanities. And the Bachelor of Advanced Humanities was a slightly lower ATAR score. So maybe start there and then think about transitioning up. And yes, essentially what happens is after a year's university study, your ATAR gets recalculated based on the university grades. And we notice that a number of people find that a way in which they can transition into. So you get a brand new ATAR, provide that ATAR is high enough to get into the program. And we'll do our best to make sure that as much credit from your previous studies that you can take across will be transferred. Now, sometimes because of the nature of the courses that you've taken, that's not always possible to give transfer 100% of the credit, but we'll work hard to make sure that you're not too disadvantaged by that first year study. We welcome students for however they come to us. We love them. And so, you know, by all means, that's something that's very, very, very possible.
Thank you, Alastair. So, a couple of other questions. When does the funding for the Western Civilization program and the Ramsay Scholarship program currently go until? Is there visibility over whether this will be extended?
Right. Yes. I mean, that's a good question, and essentially, the funding envelope is governed by a philanthropic agreement, and that philanthropic agreement is liable to renewal and extend. What I can say at this stage is that certainly we've got scholarships available for the next 3 years, and indeed funding to secure the length of the degree. So certainly there's going to be no issues if students apply for next year about, you know, the eligibility of the scholarship or indeed the continuation of the program for the life of their degree.
Thank you. I do have a couple of questions here that seem to have the same theme. So I'm going to do my best to try and put this question together. A couple of the attendees are asking for clarity around when it's actually best to apply. So they're asking questions, is it best to apply before or after you receive your ATAR? And also asking some questions about the gap year as well. They're just wanting some clarity around that. If you could address that, please, Alastair.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So essentially the time to apply is in the year preceding the time you want to start your degree. What you can't do is take an offer of a scholarship and hold it over a year, basically. So the scholarship is really only available to you for the subsequent for the following year. So if you go on a gap year, then really you apply towards the end of your gap year. You would submit your application towards the end of your gap year for starting the following year. So that's the time frame. Obviously, you know, it's great to see students with an ATAR. That allows us to get a sense of whether they've got a good chance of getting into the program or not, and obviously that's very helpful for the committee in making up its mind about the award of a scholarship. So if you've already got a place in the program, that's great. But that is just one of the factors that we will look at. So you don't have to. Yes, I mean that's one of the factors that we would do. But I wouldn't kind of say, look, you know, students who go on a gap year have a necessary advantage because they've got, as it were, an ATAR in the bank versus students who perhaps their ATAR hasn't yet been quantified.
Thank you for clarifying that. Another question too, which you might be able to deep dive in, and maybe potentially Nicholas might be able to touch on this as well. It's really kind of wanting to know, what does a strong application typically look like? Are there any common traits or experiences that successful applicants are able to share?
I think one of the nice things is actually the diversity of applications. I mean, you know, I think we have had, you know, people who, you know, have excelled in one particular area. They might be not so strong in other areas, but they managed to present a kind of rounded package. I don't think you necessarily need to think of this as a scholarship only for, you know, people who've been kind of ducks and school captain and have, you know, won national awards or anything like that. I mean, I think that you know, we look at everything relative to the opportunities that you've had, and I think that's really important to stress, is that we are very conscious that it is a very different and very mixed kind of educational environment out there, and that some people have very different kinds of opportunities available to them. So all of our scholarship decisions are made very relative to the opportunities that you've had, and I think Nick touched on it earlier. I mean, we have a huge range of students from all sorts of backgrounds, all sorts of school types, all sorts of places, and I think that there's a diversity of it. I think what really unifies them, I think, is that they are all kind of quirky, interesting students who've wanted to make an impact on the world. And I think that really defines it. If you're kind of driven by ideas, if you're kind of inquisitive, if you're just a reader, if you just kind of read a book and just want to tell everyone about it, I mean, that tends to be our kind of students. But I'm not sure whether Nick wants to add anything at that point as well.
Yeah, I would probably attest to all of those characteristics as well. I think in general, I think Alice was pretty right in using the word quirky. In that everyone that I've met that has particularly been a recipient of the scholarship has had something that really lies behind why they are so indebted to critical thinking as a skill of theirs, that they believe that they should be honing that and crafting that every day. And I would just say that, and particularly for those maybe wondering whether you've done the exact criteria of list of things, as Alistair said, dark school captain, etc., work with what you've got and work with what you're good at, because if you can show that those peaks and those that commitment to your strengths, then I think you're good to go.
Great, thanks. So yes, I'm conscious we've only got a couple more minutes, Karina. I mean, do you have a sense of how many more questions we have in the back?
Couple still here, but a lot of them have already been addressed. I guess the one last question that I don't think we've really addressed, but you sort of have, is again, people really wanting to know about the applications and how many applications we typically received for the 60 odd places. If you want to dive into that as our last question.
Yes, yeah. I mean, it varies. But I think one of the things is because the ATARs are quite high, a lot of people self-select out of the scholarship. So we tend to find that on the whole, it's certainly under the 200 or so applications we would have. So yeah, so we're normally probably choosing. I would have thought, yeah, probably around the 140 or so applications. I think is probably about where we tend to land. So yeah, so it's not a huge number of applications. So if you do apply, you do actually have quite a strong chance, because there is in fact quite a lot of scholarships up for grabs as well.
Thank you. I think that does bring us till time, and I would sincerely firstly like to thank both yourself, Alastair and Nicholas, for joining us online this afternoon, and to you, our attendees, joining us live here to be able to listen to both Alastair and Nicholas about the program and about the scholarship. I hope that you've found the information beneficial. I know for myself, working here at the university, there is definitely more information that I've learnt today, and I'm very appreciative of it. And I will definitely echo, if there's any questions based on watching even the recording for those who weren't able to join us live here today, please feel free to submit those questions through to the Western Civ email address that you can see there on this recording. I know the team there will be more than happy to address those. And we thank you so much for your time joining us online here. And we hope to see you, if anything, in the future at our upcoming open day in August. So if you'd like to meet the team, I'm sure there'll be both Alastair and students hanging around at the open day to really be able to get to meet those in the program. Would love to see you there on the 3rd of August in a couple of months' time. So that's all from me, everyone. Any final notes from yourself, Alastair and Nicholas, that you'd like to add?
No, but do come and visit the campus in August. Always open day is always a great day, and it's really lovely to meet future students. So do please. I'll be there. So I look forward to meeting you all.
Okay. Thank you, everyone.